At the end of 2005, Audi raised the bar with the menace of the Spider campaign, which perfectly captured the essence of the RS4. In 2006, the challenge was to come up with something equally original for the World Car of the Year, the A6.
Audi's a great brand, and when we make an ad, which we don't do very often, it's probably a once or twice a year occurrence, people expect it to be good. I think for the last 25 years, BBH have made some fantastic ads for us. They're always absolutely right for the moment. So I think when we make an ad, yeah, it's important it's good, and it's important that people like it.
Satellite, Audi's new ad for the A6, will move the game on one step further. Over 600 people will have worked on the project by the time the ad goes on air, in locations spanning Canada, London and Prague. The production team would endure sleepless nights, the heat of the prairies, and the cold and wet of a nighttime runway. Not to mention extreme jet lag, brought about by traveling from one to another. In the end, though, what everyone strived for was a remarkable ad that would rank up there amongst the best automotive ads ever. Here is the story of Satellite and how it came to air. Like all commercials, work begins by developing an idea. And for two advertising creatives, the source of much inspiration was the local cafe.
This one's been quite a good one for us in that we were involved right at the start, which is the way we prefer to work, really. We came across this fact that said that they had 9,621 patents, which sort of seemed like quite a lot. You've never really thought about it before, how many patents they have, but that seems like quite a lot, and we kept on coming back to that.
I think we loved the whole idea of patents, which obviously came first. And that's obviously absolutely central to the whole Audi brand core of Vorsprung durch Technik, advancement through technology. I think when the patents idea was then developed to include comparisons with NASA and the fact that Audi had registered more patents, that became incredibly exciting and a great way of demonstrating that through the use of space.
We talked before about putting things in orbit, you know, kind of household appliances and things, and thought, well, actually, if you put a car in orbit, that seemed to tie very well with this fact. They seemed, you know, it seemed like you obviously needed to bring it to life somehow, and that seemed like a way of doing that.
Just in a very quick detail, machinery stopping.
The choice of film director to realize the creative treatment was an easy one, in relative newcomer Johnny Green.
We had big-name directors who wanted to make this film, and we'd seen this short film that Johnny had made, Namka's Dream, that was so involving and so intense and really, really complex and yet deadly simple. And essentially, he'd never really worked in commercials. He was unknown to a certain extent, unproven. And yet I think it was probably one of the easiest decisions we made.
So Jimmy, he needs to come in the other way, so he's walking to us. Okay.
I think with most directors, you almost begin with a visual interpretation. And I have a very specific visual interpretation for each film that I make, and it tries to push as many boundaries as possible and tries to give the viewer an option to make their own choices. I'm not really interested in making films or commercials that are so obvious that the viewer's like, okay, fine, well, what's the point of watching that?
Having selected Johnny as the director and his treatment, and I suppose what he was bringing to the table and dramatising this idea, we very much work with the director and need his expertise and how best to capture that on film.
Johnny's approach is very based around a scrapbook, a sketchbook, and everything has been presented from that.
I mean, he turned up with just the most craziest references you've ever seen. Indecipherable scrolls and these odd pictures, and he had these kind of reference books of titles that we'd never seen before, and it's kind of, we started getting really excited about the project.
The book's a combination of images and bits of storyboard, so the original idea that was we would be in Midwest America in a timeless place, and we all had confidence that Canada Calgary, southern Alberta was the right location. Small industrial towns, huge empty landscapes.
Guys, we're very close to shooting.
A two-day location shoot began in August 2006 in Milo, a small community a short distance from Calgary. A key member of the crew throughout production was the director of photography.
In conversation with the agency and the way that I thought the film should be, it should have a period quality to it, or a texture to it, most importantly. So almost every shot is filled with texture. So I ended up using a DP called Alex Barber, who's an old friend, and doesn't mind the fact that I want to have a funny little 16mm camera with me the whole time and shoot as much as I can myself.
Stand by and roll.
That's great. That's great.
The two-day shoot in Milo was predominantly spent filming Harry, the central character whose journey home from work mirrors that of the car returning to Earth.
I think the most difficult thing with this film is to create something that's visually impressionistic, which leaves the viewer with a lot to imagine. And therefore it was very important to connect to a human being, which is why Harry became so important.
Action. I'll tell you when to stop.
Casting Harry was just as crucial as finding the right location, and for many weeks the ideal person proved hard to find.
We'd been casting for quite a while, and we'd had a couple of people who came pretty close. And I think it was actually probably the day before we started filming, and we saw this guy and he was just so spot on, and you can just see in his face there's so much going on there.
He looks like he's a big, tough, strong-minded dude, and I think that's what I am, but I've had to cover it up a lot just to survive, because I had 7 children, and you have to behave to feed those, and you can't be jumping from job to job, so you keep your mouth shut.
At any one time, there are like thousands of satellites passing overhead, and none of us really noticed them. So we wanted someone who was just that little bit special, that he somehow sensed it. You know, the animals sense it, the horses sense it.
In the final version, the horses would be on screen for only a second or so, but getting the images required was a long, hot, and exhausting process.
We're going to shoot them as they get up in a startled manner. Once they're laying on the ground, it's very important that everyone's quiet so the trainers can work with them.
The assistant director is an important member of the crew if things are to run according to plan. On the satellite shoot, it's Jimmy Bland.
My role as the first AD is to run the set and help Johnny Green assemble all the shots he needs, put them into the schedule, figure out what days we're going to shoot which shots, and move ahead to get all those shots on the shoot days.
Much of the filming was done at night, using various locations around Milo to trace Harry's walk home.
I still have some room on the lens so I can go wider.
It's pitch black at night. There's not a lot of light pollution. It's a small town, and it's kind of like, you know, it's going to be a bit more sensitive to what's going on up there than a kind of, say, a big city. So it kind of fitted in with the story. I mean, it's quite Spielberg-esque, and we wanted to sort of create that kind of atmosphere.
And we're still at it.
Having large film crews in the neighborhood wasn't something the residents of this sleepy town were used to, especially for those homes the production invaded.
You hear somebody in the kitchen, have a look at the kitchen, back to the TV, take a drink.
After leaving Milo, the crew headed for Calgary, where filming began in a steel foundry.
Hey, action welder! Action background!
This was the place where Harry's journey began.
Stop welding! Stop welding! Take off your mask, check your work.
I weld these nozzles every day, but the things that they're asking us to do, start and stop all the time during the shoot, is totally against procedure, but I'm gonna have to fix this on Monday.
You can be kind of lost in your own.
It transpired Harry is a foreman, a regular guy doing a regular job. By using real workers from the foundry, Johnny was able to get the authentic feel he wanted.
they're so easygoing. I mean, I had to grubby up all their stuff. They're totally fine with that, and they're really happy to just be a part of this, I think, you know, and so it's great, yeah. All characters, all wonderful guys.
Despite the authentic look, artistic license came into effect at some points. The men weren't used to clocking in, and being directed to walk around in circles was certainly alien.
You boys all have a good weekend?
It needed to have scale, this film. It really, you know, we really wanted it to feel big, and the filmic qualities that we've given it, I think, just move it up a notch.
Yes.
The production needed to withstand changes at the last minute. A nighttime location favored by Johnny had been changed to somewhere nearer the foundry to save time. But despite a 3-hour trip for the entire crew and 30 vehicles, Johnny had clear ideas as to what he wanted, and this new location didn't deliver.
Having recce'd all day trying to replace what we had to start with, which was perfect location, we've had a bit of misinformation. The road's a bit too wide, and give the director that graphic look he wants. So we've made a call to pack up and cargo back to Blackie, original location, to, yeah, do it as we originally planned.
A setback, but the shot to get was the vital one, which links Milo, and importantly Harry, with the car in space.
It's kind of like he's been at work all day and he's kind of walking home through the dark cornfields and he kind of, you know, he sort of sees something going on up there.
Dog sensing something's happening, Harry feeling something's happening, something's going on, but he doesn't really know all he really wants to do is get home, have a beer. It's probably the most important shot of the commercial, and we had half an hour, 45 minutes really to shoot it before sunrise.
Yesterday was about a 16-hour day, and today we're looking already into the 12th, 13th hour. So, you know, that's been quite physically demanding.
After wrapping in Canada, it was back to London for the next stage of shooting at Pinewood Studios. The underwater stage there had recently been used to shoot scenes for the Da Vinci Code and Basic Instinct 2, but in the case of Satellite, it was needed to film just one shot, the final one. For the past few years, all of Audi's ads have had a similar ending. Satellite would be different.
We try to be Vorspring in our communication, a bit progressive in everything we try and do. And as part of the story, we thought it'd just be fantastic, this notion of this car coming from space, landing through the water, and such a different way of presenting the car coming towards camera.
A parachute release, descending towards a black ocean, cutting to an empty seascape and absolute silence for long enough for the audience to think that the film is over, and then the impact, the power of seeing a car crashing into the ocean and sliding past camera. I think that was probably the bravest and most exciting part of the job, working out how to achieve that shot, talking to cameramen, talking to post-production supervisors, building scale models of the car to get the real movement and displacement of water.
Cars, when you see them in the films, they invariably float. They stop dead, so we had to go smaller and build a rig that could accommodate the action. So we built a quarter-scale mock-up of the car, and we feel the bubbles, etc., will scale accordingly.
Getting this shot right involved the expertise of a lot of people, including visual effects designers who were there to oversee the shoot.
Isolate round here and put the clean parts back in there. I'm involved with the director straight from script, storyboard stage to his initial thoughts, working out how we're going to approach shots, and my job on set is to make sure that all of the various elements that are shot are going to work together when we come back to the post house and put them all together.
The finished sequence would only last a matter of seconds on screen, but the total time spent rigging, testing and filming kept the 40-man crew at Pinewood for 4 days.
You know, yes, it's a huge amount of work, but this ad will also have legs and be used abroad in other markets around the world. And I think then it all makes it very worthwhile.
Takhle to chceš teda, tak sem dej ještě tam ten další kabel, ten jede a...
One country which may run the ad in the future could be the Czech Republic, the production's next location. More precisely, an airfield just outside Prague, where the team were met by a local crew. It was here the star of the commercial would make its first appearance. And again, Jimmy was in place to make sure everyone knew their jobs.
And when this car and this car are at the speed we say, 5 or 10 or 30, they honk their horns.
With a little help from a translator.
Quite interesting, this part of the job. We've got to drive this car, completely blacked out windows, not allowed to see too much, covered in black, in the dark, getting covered in water without using the wipers.
The car was filmed at night to simulate its journey through space. And Johnny's way of shooting it was typical of his style of filmmaking.
Johnny's got a sort of great way of working where he uses kind of like extreme close-ups, kind of flickering, time-lapse, kind of layering effect, and just kind of jumbles it all together and comes out with something a bit special.
I thought it would be much better to employ various techniques to abstract the car, shooting long exposures in combination with rain and mist and smoke.
It has to look like it's been shot by astronauts. It has to look like it's on 16mm and 8mm and different kind of techniques just to give it that quality.
Johnny's style is fantastic. I think we bought into his filmic style, and the fact that we were assured that it wouldn't look hammy, you know, having a car floating around in space, and certainly from the early cuts I've seen, that's absolutely not the case.
Within a few days, production had shifted back to England, where work was already underway at Black Island Studios in West London. For 2 days, the massive Stage 5 was home to various units, large and small, all with a separate shot or sequence to complete.
When it comes to choosing a director, you're obviously looking for someone to bring life to your creation. So you really want someone who is questioning and pushing in as many different ways just to make sure that you get the most out of your idea, basically. Because sometimes they're the bits that just make the film so magical.
There's so many directors out there that you kind of know what you're going to get before you kind of finished, and we wanted to do something that kind of pushed the boat out a bit and does space in a way that you've never seen space before.
It was Johnny's experience as an art director which helped him portray outer space without relying too much on computer graphics.
I'd wanted to shoot as many real elements as possible, so light passes, particle passes, details of the car in the studio in combination with light movement and dust movements and smoke movements.
Go a bit left if you can.
Every step along the way you have to think of ways of thinking, well, how would Hollywood do it? How would some kind of, you know, big blockbuster film do it? And how can we do it different?
A quick but significant image in the ad is that of a cockroach crawling across a graph.
They run away from light, which is always fun when you're filming with them, because normally you want to put a great big light on them. They go crazy when it's hot, which is always good in the studio. So yeah, apart from the heat and the light, they're quite easy to work with. They don't bite and they don't fly.
The largest unit at work over the 2 days of filming were the model makers, whose job it was to make a miniature representation of a Milo street.
You know, I wouldn't find the kind of houses or be able to shoot at night and get the kind of detail without building them as models. So it became an obsession, and strangely there are only 2 or 3 shots in the film, and Kalpesh, my amazing model maker, will be kind of distraught that there are so few shots in the film. But the shots that are in the film I think work very well.
Final rehearsal?
We pretty much designed the whole village based on references and just putting houses that we like together. So yeah, about 2 weeks in total, from the design and construction and paint and build and electrics and everything. You know, there's a lot of detail, and it's just trying to make something not look like a model, especially for something like this. You've got to really go all the way. You know, door handles, miniature lights, railings, whatever exists in a small town, we build.
And when the production's finished,
I think we'll keep it for about 2 weeks, admire it a little bit more, and then bin it, I guess.
The intensity that he's put into filming I think will be reflected in the finished film. I don't think there were no shortcuts to getting to the film that we've got. You couldn't, you know, if you tried to do it in 2 days and just shot in like one location, the film wouldn't have the richness and it just wouldn't be as intense.
So we tried as very much as give the flexibility to the director to shoot as much as possible, so that when we came to the edit, we had that pool of footage to be able to cut a very differentiated kind of look.
The intensity of shooting on location was then replaced by long hours spent in various edit suites across central London.
In here I bring all of the CG elements, I bring all of the elements that have been shot and transferred to digital tape. They all come together in here.
And he's got the same kind of setup on this shot as well. Yeah.
In terms of everything that's shot, film-wise, video-wise, the elements that I'll use or speed up, it comes down to a tiny amount, but still essential.
What I liked about this one is the sparkle bits. The sparkly bits on here and dust and on here. Yeah.
And some of the most interesting parts of the post-production process is some of the stock footage we've been looking at, and they're all shot on these old Bolex and Leica cameras. So we thought, how can we incorporate that into the process? And it's really interesting in seeing that come to life.
Detailing on the computer-generated car was an important consideration.
I think it's absolutely imperative that the ad is real and, you know, real life, and that's obvious that, you know, that if a car's just come through the atmosphere and you see it, it would be ridiculous if it looked like it had just driven out of a showroom.
Audio work to the film was completed at the same time as the pictures. But the soundtrack to this ad would be quite distinctive.
A lot of films will have a music track that will provide a narrative support throughout the piece. This film doesn't have that. It relies solely on the kind of sound design, sound effects, and occasional sort of mood pieces of music. Whilst the shoot was going into production, Joseph and myself were collecting sounds that we thought would be useful for the job, and to really start collecting lots of new recordings that essentially won't be anything like anyone's ever heard before.
From the initial brief to BBH to the commercial's first airing, the production took 5 months to complete. The idea behind Satellite will form an integrated campaign across all media, including print and online. But the ad will be at the forefront of the campaign and will once again push the boundaries of automotive advertising that people have come to expect from Audi.
We're lucky in this situation that we've got a very forward-looking client. With Chris, we've got someone who is aware that actually the most dangerous commercial to make is one that's the same as any other car commercial, and is aware that you really do have to be different in order to get anyone's attention.
I think, you know, in these days of huge amounts of clutter on television, you know, enormous amounts of ads executed in the same kind of way, then it's very, very important to have a really good idea that is executed in an interesting and different way. I think with this ad you'll find something new every time you watch it, and I think that's great.
Standing by for separation.